Commander Rilara Vesh stood motionless before the vast observation window of her flagship, the Luminance. Her slender fingers, delicate yet strong from decades of military service, traced abstract patterns on the cold surface as she gazed out at the fleet. Her fleet, spread before her like broken jewels against the velvet of space. Hundreds of Varelli vessels drifted in formation, their hulls refracting starlight in prismatic patterns that once symbolized the pride of her people. Now they were merely beautiful coffins. "Commander," a voice called softly from behind her. "The readings from the Children's Ark are deteriorating." Rilara didn't turn immediately. She knew what waited in Second Officer Tal's report. More failures, more systems collapsing, more time slipping away. "How long?" she asked, her voice betraying no emotion, though her heart constricted painfully in her chest. 2 weeks, Commander. Perhaps less for the nursery sections. 10,000 children. The last generation of their kind. The future that might never be. Rilara finally turned, her luminescent eyes catching the dim emergency lighting of the bridge. The Luminance's power reserves were prioritized for life support now, not aesthetics. Around her, bridge officers worked in near darkness, their faces illuminated only by the glow of failing console displays. "And our distress signals?" Tal's expression told her everything. "Still broadcasting on all frequencies. Commander, no response." Of course not. The Aegis sector was a wasteland, a remote region on the galactic frontier that no civilized species frequented. That was why she had chosen it, to hide from the Kalrax, to give her people time to repair what had been sabotaged. A strategic decision that now sentenced 1.5 million refugees to a slow death. "Continue broadcasting," she ordered unnecessarily. Her officers would do their duty until the end. "And prepare my shuttle. I will inspect the Children's Ark personally." As Tal moved to comply, a young communications officer suddenly straightened at her station. "Commander, I'm detecting an anomalous signal at the edge of the system. Unknown configuration." For the first time in weeks, Rilara felt something other than despair, a flicker of either hope or fear. "Kalrax?" "Negative, Commander. The signature doesn't match any known Kalrax vessel." Rilara's mind raced through possibilities. The Kalrax would have simply destroyed them immediately. Pirates would have attacked by now. That left only one terrifying, wonderful possibility. First contact with a new species, here at their most vulnerable moment. "All hands," she commanded, her voice gaining strength. "Prepare for potential contact. Divert emergency power to communications and translator systems." As her crew rushed to comply, Rilara returned her gaze to the window. Somewhere out there, someone was watching them. Whether they came as saviors or scavengers would determine the fate of her entire species. Captain Aidan Clark of the United Human Ship. Horizon leaned forward in his command chair, studying the holographic display with growing amazement. "Confirm those readings. Lieutenant Rahman, are you absolutely certain?" Lieutenant Karim Rahman, the Horizon's sensor officer, nodded emphatically. "Confirmed, Captain. We're detecting dozens, no, hundreds, of massive vessels approximately 0.8 AU from our position. Preliminary scans indicate they're dead in space. No propulsion signatures. Minimal power emissions. But," he paused, double-checking his instruments, "there are millions of life signs aboard." Clark exchanged glances with his executive officer. Lieutenant Mara Lee, her usually stoic expression, had given way to visible astonishment. "First contact," she whispered, "and it appears to be an entire civilization." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Horizon was a survey vessel, charting anomalous quantum signatures in uncharted space. They were equipped for scientific exploration, not diplomatic missions of this magnitude. "Options, XO?" Clark asked, already knowing what his own instincts demanded. Lieutenant Lee straightened. Protocol suggests we maintain distance and relay coordinates to Earth Command for a proper first contact team. And how long would that take? At minimum, 3 weeks for a response, Captain. Clark studied the sensor readings again. The power signatures from the alien vessels were faltering, inconsistent. Those ships are failing, Lieutenant. Their life support systems are showing critical degradation patterns. He stood. Decision made. We're not leaving millions to die while we wait for bureaucracy. Lieutenant Rahman. Continue passive scans. Communications Officer Devin Williams. Prepare universal translator systems and ready a simple greeting package. Mathematical sequences. Basic chemistry. The standard approach. He turned to Lieutenant Lee. Mara. Ready a small drone. We'll send it ahead as a non-threatening probe. Let's see how they react. As his crew prepared for humanity's first encounter with this mysterious alien fleet, Clark couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled upon something momentous. Not just an opportunity for contact, but perhaps a rescue mission, unlike any in human history. Captain, Rahman called, his voice tight with urgency. I'm detecting what appears to be a distress signal broadcasting from the alien fleet. Our computers can't decode it yet, but the pattern and repetition are consistent with emergency protocols. Clark nodded grimly. Then we proceed with all haste. These people need help, and we're going to give it to them. The small human drone approached the luminance cautiously, its cameras capturing the breathtaking scale and unusual design of the Varelli flagship. On board, the Horizon. Clark and his officers watched in silence as the imagery streamed back. Those hull configurations, murmured Chief Engineer Jonas Petrov, who had joined them on the bridge. They're like nothing I've ever seen. The curvature almost resembles liquid glass. The drone continued its approach until it hovered just outside what they presumed to be a main airlock. Its sensors confirmed what they had feared. Life support systems throughout the alien fleet were failing systematically. They're dying. Dr. Elena Morales, the ship's chief medical officer, said quietly. Those atmospheric readings suggest severe oxygen depletion and buildup of carbon dioxide analogs. Whatever their biology, they can't survive much longer in those conditions. Clark made his decision. Prepare a landing party. Myself, Lieutenant Lee, Dr. Morales, Chief Petrov, and Communications Officer Williams. Full environmental suits as a precaution, both for our protection and to avoid exposing them to human pathogens. Captain, Lee objected. Regulations state the commanding officer should not. This isn't a standard mission. XO. Clark cut her off. These people need to see our authority and commitment. I'm going. 30 minutes later, Clark led his team through the Horizon's airlock and into a small shuttle. As they approached the massive alien flagship, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. It dwarfed their own ship several times over. Look there. Williams pointed toward what appeared to be figures, moving behind a transparent section of hull. They're watching us. Clark nodded. Good. That means they're still alive and alert enough to respond. Let's hope the translator can establish basic communication. The shuttle docked against what seemed to be an emergency airlock on the alien vessel. After cycling through decontamination protocols, Clark led his team into the ship. The interior was dimly lit by emergency lighting that cast a soft blue glow across curved corridors that seemed to flow organically, rather than meeting at harsh angles. They hadn't traveled far when they encountered a delegation of aliens waiting for them. Clark's breath caught in his throat at his first sight of the Varelli. They were tall and slender, with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer even in the low light. Their faces were elegantly proportioned, with large, luminescent eyes that regarded the humans with unmistakable intelligence and caution. One stepped forward, clearly the leader, and spoke. The sound was melodic but incomprehensible to human ears. Williams immediately activated the translator device, which began analyzing the speech patterns. Clark raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "We come as friends," he said clearly. "We detected your distress signal and want to help." The translator hummed, processing his words and converting them into approximations of the alien language. After a moment of silence, the alien leader responded, and the translator struggled to convert the reply. "I am Commander Rilara Vesh. You have found the last of the Vareli people. We are—" The translation faltered momentarily. "Grateful for your arrival, though it may be too late." Over the next hour, through halting, imperfect translation, Clark and Rilara exchanged crucial information. The Vareli had fled their home systems after a devastating war with an aggressive species called the Calrax. Their quantum drives had been sabotaged during their escape, leaving their massive refugee fleet stranded in this remote sector. Life support systems were failing throughout the fleet, with critical shortages of oxygen, food, and medicine. "We have 10,000 children aboard the vessel we call the Children's Ark," Rilara explained. Her translator, now functioning more smoothly after continuous adaptation. "They will be the first to perish if our systems continue to fail." Clark nodded grimly. "We need to assess the extent of your technical issues. With your permission, our chief engineer and medical officer would like to inspect your critical systems." Rilara hesitated only briefly before nodding. "We welcome any assistance you can provide, Captain Clark. But I must be honest, we are a fleet of 1.5 million refugees. Your vessel, while impressive, seems insufficient to save us all." "You're right," Clark admitted. "But we're not alone. I need to contact Earth, our home planet, and request a humanitarian mission. In the meantime, the Horizon will provide whatever supplies and technical assistance we can spare." For the first time, a flicker of hope appeared in Rilara's luminescent eyes. "Then perhaps the Vareli have found friends among the stars after all." Chief Engineer Jonas Petrov had seen many technological marvels during his 15 years with Earth's fleet, but nothing prepared him for the elegance of Vareli engineering. As he followed the Vareli chief engineer, Errol Soren, through the labyrinthine corridors of the Luminance, he found himself alternately amazed and troubled. "Your bioreactors," Petrov said, examining the failing systems that provided power throughout the ship. "They're integrated with organic components, aren't they?" Aurel nodded, his slender fingers manipulating a control panel that responded to touch with ripples of light. "Yes. Vareli technology has always merged the biological with the mechanical. Our ships are partially grown, rather than merely constructed." "Fascinating," Petrov murmured. "But that makes our job more complicated. These systems are deteriorating because—" "The living components require nutrients we can no longer synthesize," Errol confirmed. "The sabotage by the Calrax was insidious. They introduced a pathogen that gradually breaks down our synthetic enzyme production facilities." In the medical bay of the Children's Ark, Dr. Elena Morales faced similar revelations. The Vareli children were beautiful. Their translucent skin seemed to glow from within, and their large eyes held an intelligence that transcended language barriers. But they were also starving, their bodies unable to process the dwindling nutritional supplies without specific enzymes. "The problem is biochemical, not just mechanical," she explained to Captain Clark over the comm system. "Their food synthesizers aren't just broken. They've been infected with something that prevents them from producing the enzymes the Vareli physiology requires. We don't yet have the capability to mass-produce these enzymes." Back on the Horizon, Clark faced the grim reality of their situation. His small survey vessel carried supplies for a crew of 120 for a 6-month mission. Even if they emptied their stores completely, they could only sustain a tiny fraction of the Vareli fleet for a few days at most. "Captain," Lieutenant Lee reported, "I've prepared the emergency transmission to Earth Command. It details the situation and requests immediate implementation of the Galactic Relief Directive." Clark nodded. The GRD was a relatively new protocol, established after humanity had begun its expansion into deep space. It authorized the immediate diversion of resources for large-scale humanitarian efforts, even across species boundaries. "Send it," he ordered, "and add my personal endorsement. Make it clear that this is not merely a first contact scenario, but a civilization-level emergency." As Lee transmitted the message, Clark knew they were in a race against time. Even at maximum FTL speeds, the nearest human relief vessels would take at least 4 days to reach them. The Varelli fleet had perhaps 2 weeks of life support remaining, and that estimate was optimistic. "We need to prioritize," he told his officers. "The Children's Ark first, then the medical ships, then vessels with the highest population density. We'll transfer all non-essential supplies from the Horizon immediately." "Captain," Williams interjected, "what about the call racks? Commander Vesh mentioned they might still be pursuing the Varelli fleet." Clark's expression darkened. "Then we'd better hope Earth Command responds quickly, because if the call racks find us here, the Horizon won't be enough to protect 1.5 million refugees." In the cold darkness of remote call rack space, Warlord Thraxus stood before a massive tactical display. His scaled skin glinted in the harsh light as he studied the holographic representation of his fleet. 20 warships, each a testament to Kalrak's military might. "The tracking signals have converged in the Aegis sector," reported his second-in-command. "The Varelli cowards fled to the frontier, as you predicted." Thraxus's lips curled into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Of course they did. Commander Vesh is nothing if not predictable in her desperation." He expanded the holographic display with a gesture of his clawed hand. "What is the status of their fleet?" "Our sabotage programs are functioning as designed, Warlord. Their quantum drives are completely disabled, and their life support systems are degrading. Intelligence suggests they have approximately 2 standard weeks before total system failure." Thraxus considered this information with cold calculation. "Too long. The Varelli are resourceful. Given enough time, they might find a way to survive or signal for help. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. We will finish what we started." His officer hesitated. "Warlord, there is another matter. Our long-range sensors detected an anomalous signature near the Varelli fleet. It appears to be a ship of unknown configuration." For the first time, Thraxus's confident demeanor faltered. "Show me!" The display shifted to reveal sensor readings of a small vessel, tiny compared to Varelli ships, but distinctly alien in design. "Interesting," Thraxus murmured. "It seems the Varelli have encountered another species, one unknown to us. Should we delay our attack until we can gather more intelligence on this new factor?" Thraxus dismissed the suggestion with a wave of his hand. "No. If anything, this accelerates our timeline. We cannot allow the Varelli to establish alliances with other species." His eyes narrowed as he studied the alien ship. "Whatever this new species may be, they will learn the price of interfering in Kalrak's matters." Over the next 3 days, the crew of the Horizon worked tirelessly alongside their Varelli counterparts. Human environmental suits became a common sight throughout the refugee fleet as engineers, medical personnel, and technicians did everything possible to stabilize the failing systems. Captain Clark had authorized the offloading of 70% of the Horizon's supplies, a decision that placed his own crew at risk, but bought precious time for the Varelli. Dr. Morales had made remarkable progress adapting human medical technologies to Varelli physiology, while Chief Petrov and Errol Soren had developed jury-rigged power couplings that helped stabilize the most critical life support systems. On the 4th day, as Clark was reviewing resource allocation reports with Lieutenant Lee, Communications Officer Williams burst onto the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command." Clark straightened immediately. "On screen." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Helena Zhang, Earth Fleet Command. "Captain Clark," she began without preamble. We've reviewed your implementation of the Galactic Relief Directive. Your actions are approved retroactively. Clark felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Thank you, Admiral. What support can we expect? The humanitarian vessel Mercy has already departed Earth space with medical supplies and food synthesizers. The cruisers, Defiant and Resolute, are providing escort, along with a small fleet of engineering vessels. ETA to your position is 3 days. 3 days, Clark repeated, stunned. Admiral, with respect, the quickest response time we calculated was 6 days minimum. Admiral Zhang's expression softened slightly. Your message was compelling, Captain. I personally authorized the diversion of vessels that were already deployed near the frontier. This is a historic moment for humanity, our first large-scale humanitarian mission to another species. We will not fail. After the transmission ended, Clark turned to find Lieutenant Lee watching him with newfound respect. I underestimated you, Captain, she admitted. When you first ordered us to approach the Varelli fleet, I thought you were being reckless. Clark shook his head. Not reckless. Mara, just human. We can't turn our backs on suffering, regardless of the species involved. He gestured toward the view screen, which showed Varelli ships stretched out before them. Now, let's go tell Commander Vesh the good news. The news of Earth's relief fleet spread through the Varelli vessels like wildfire, igniting hope where there had been only resignation. On the children's ark, Rilara Vesh walked through the nursery sections, observing with gratitude as human medical personnel worked alongside Varelli caretakers to stabilize the children's condition. Dr. Elena Morales approached her, removing the helmet of her environmental suit as she entered the sterilized communication chamber where they could speak face to face. Commander Vesh, she greeted Rilara warmly. I have good news. We've synthesized a small batch of the primary enzymes your children need. It's not enough for your entire fleet, but it should help stabilize the most critical cases until our relief ships arrive. Rilara bowed her head in the Varelli gesture of deep respect. Dr. Morales, my people owe you a debt we cannot repay. When we fled the Kalrax, we believed we might be the only sentient species who valued life above conquest. You have shown us otherwise. Dr. Morales smiled. Humanity has had its share of conflicts and darkness, Commander. But we've learned that cooperation and compassion are ultimately more powerful than domination. When our relief fleet arrives, she was interrupted by an urgent communication from the horizon. Dr. Morales, came Captain Clark's voice, tight with tension. Return to the horizon immediately. All personnel, emergency recall. Captain, she questioned, what's happening? There was a brief pause before Clark responded, his voice grim. Our long-range sensors have detected multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Varelli confirmed their configuration. The Kalrax have found us. The Kalrax fleet emerged from hyperspace like predators scenting blood. 20 warships, their hulls black and angular in stark contrast to the flowing lines of Varelli vessels, arranged themselves in attack formation at the system's edge. On the bridge of the horizon, Captain Clark watched the tactical display with growing concern. Analysis, Lieutenant Lee? She studied the readings grimly. 20 vessels, heavily armed. Their smallest ship outguns the horizon 3-1. Conservative estimate puts their combined firepower at roughly 50 times our capability. Clark nodded. It was as bad as he'd feared. Options. Limited, Captain. The horizon isn't a warship. We could attempt to escape using our FTL drive, but that would mean abandoning the Varelli, Clark finished. Not an option. The communication system chimed, and Williams reported, Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Kalrax vessel. Put it through. The view screen flickered, revealing a reptilian humanoid with scaled skin and cold, calculating eyes. I am Warlord Thraxus of the Kalrax Empire. You have interfered in matters beyond your understanding. Alien vessel. The Varelli are traitors and fugitives. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed alongside them. Clark stood, meeting the warlord's gaze steadily. I am Captain Aidan Clark of the United Human Ship Horizon. The Varelli fleet consists of civilian refugees, including thousands of children. Under the principles of the Galactic Relief Directive, we have extended humanitarian aid to them. We request that you respect their non-combatant status. Thraxus's expression didn't change, but his voice took on a dangerous edge. Your directive holds no meaning in Kalrak space. Human. The Varelli are our enemy. Those who aid them share their fate. This isn't Kalrak space, Clark countered. And a human relief fleet will arrive within 3 days. I suggest diplomacy, warlord. There's nothing to be gained by attacking refugees. You have 1 hour to withdraw, Thraxus replied, ignoring Clark's appeal. After that, we attack. The transmission ended abruptly. Lieutenant Lee looked at Clark. Captain, even if we could hold them off for 3 days until our relief fleet arrives, the Kalraks would simply send more ships. We're severely outmatched. Then we need to change the game, Clark replied. Contact Commander Vesh. We need to coordinate our defenses, and I have an idea that might just buy us the time we need. In the Luminance's command center, Clark outlined his desperate plan to Commander Vesh and his own officers. The Kalraks have the advantage in firepower, but the Varelli fleet gives us one thing they don't expect: cover. The debris field from derelict Varelli ships creates a natural maze that we can use to our advantage. He manipulated the holographic display, highlighting areas throughout the Varelli fleet. We'll position the Horizon here, using the larger Varelli vessels as shields. When the Kalraks attack, they'll have to navigate through the fleet to reach their primary targets. Commander Vesh studied the tactical display. An effective strategy, Captain, but it places your vessel at extreme risk. The Horizon is more maneuverable than your ships, Clark explained. We can conduct hit-and-run attacks while staying within the cover of your fleet. But we need more than just evasive tactics. We need a way to actually hurt them. Chief Engineer Petrov cleared his throat. Captain, I've been working with Errol on something that might help. The Varelli ships use energy projection systems that, while not designed as weapons, could be modified to disrupt Kalrak's shields. Explain, Clark prompted. Errol stepped forward. Our quantum communication arrays project focused energy beams to maintain fleet-wide connections. If we reconfigure them and power them with your fusion reactors, they could potentially create disruption fields that would interfere with Kalrak's shield harmonics. Hybrid weapons, Lieutenant Lee mused, combining human and Varelli technology. It's experimental, Petrov cautioned, and risky. The power couplings between our systems aren't designed for this kind of energy transfer. We could face overloads, perhaps even catastrophic failures. Clark nodded grimly. Begin modifications immediately. We'll deploy these hybrid disruptors on as many vessels as possible within the hour. He turned to Commander Vesh. We also need to evacuate your most vulnerable populations to the center of the fleet. The Children's Ark, medical ships. Anything with critical life support issues. I will give the orders, Rilara agreed. But Captain, my people are not warriors. We fled rather than fight. Sometimes running isn't an option, Clark replied gently. But we're not asking you to become warriors, just to help us protect your children until help arrives. As the others dispersed to implement their plans, Lieutenant Lee remained behind with Clark. It won't be enough, she said quietly. Even with these hybrid weapons, we can't hold off 20 Kalrak's warships for 3 days. We don't need to defeat them, Clark corrected her. We just need to make the price of victory too high. If we can bloody their nose enough in the initial engagement, Thraxus might reconsider his approach. Lee didn't look convinced. And if he doesn't? Clark's expression hardened. Then we make sure the Kalraks remember this day, and that the relief fleet finds enough survivors to make our stand worthwhile. As the hour deadline approached, frantic preparations continued throughout the Vareli fleet. Chief Petrov and Errol Sorin had successfully modified 7 quantum arrays into makeshift disruptors, while Dr. Morales coordinated the evacuation of the most vulnerable Vareli to the fleet center. On the Horizons Bridge, Captain Clark watched the tactical display as the Kalrax fleet began to move. "They're advancing," Lieutenant Rahman reported. "Standard attack formation. Estimated time to weapon range, 6 minutes." Clark nodded grimly. "All hands to battle stations. Divert auxiliary power to shields and engines. Weapon systems on standby." He opened a channel to the Luminance. "Commander Vesh, the Kalrax are moving in. Are your people ready?" "As ready as we can be, Captain," came Rilara's steady reply. "The hybrid disruptors are charged and awaiting your signal. Hold them in reserve," Clark instructed. "Let's see how the Kalrax approach first. They may still be open to negotiation." But that hope died as the Kalrax fleet accelerated, their formation splitting into 3 attack groups that spread out to encircle the Vareli fleet. "They're not slowing down," Lee observed tensely. "No attempt at further communication." "Then we make our stand," Clark decided. "Helm, bring us around to position Alpha. Tactical. Target the lead vessel's propulsion systems." The Horizon surged forward, weaving between massive Vareli ships as it moved to intercept the approaching Kalrax vessels. As they emerged from behind a derelict cruiser, they came face to face with the first Kalrax warship, a black, angular predator that dwarfed the human vessel. "Fire!" Clark ordered. The Horizons. Weapon systems discharged, energy beams striking the Kalrax ship's shields with minimal effect. In response, the warship fired a barrage that rocked the human vessel violently. "Shields at 60%, reported the tactical officer. "Their weapons are significantly more powerful than our estimates." "Captain." "Evasive pattern Delta," Clark commanded. "Get us back behind cover and signal the Luminance. Activate the first disruptor array." Aboard the Vareli flagship, Errol Sorin initiated the hybrid weapon. The reconfigured quantum array hummed to life, drawing power from human fusion cells. Energy built rapidly, creating an oscillating field that expanded outward toward the nearest Kalrax vessel. The effect was immediate and spectacular. As the disruptor field washed over the Kalrax warship, its shields flickered and destabilized. The ship lurched, systems momentarily failing as the unexpected energy pattern interfered with its technology. "It worked!" Petrov exclaimed over the comm. "Their shields are vulnerable." "All weapons, fire on that vessel," Clark ordered. The Horizon emerged from cover again, weapons blazing at the temporarily unshielded sections of the Kalrax ship. This time, their attacks left visible damage on the hull. But the advantage was short-lived. The Kalrax fleet responded with overwhelming force, concentrating fire on the section of the Vareli fleet where the disruptor had activated. 2 abandoned Vareli ships exploded under the barrage, creating a debris field that threatened nearby vessels. "They're targeting the disruptors," Lee realized. "They've identified the threat." Throughout the Vareli fleet, chaos erupted as Kalrax weapons fire tore through the outer vessels. The Horizon darted between cover points, firing when possible, but mainly trying to draw fire away from the most vulnerable ships. "Captain," Williams called out, "the Children's Ark is taking heavy fire. Their shields are failing." Clark's blood ran cold. "Helm, get us there now. Maximum thrust." The Horizon raced toward the Children's Ark, but it was clear they wouldn't reach it in time. 3 Kalrax warships had surrounded the vessel, their weapons systematically dismantling its defenses. Then, unexpectedly, several damaged Vareli cruisers moved into position, physically placing themselves between the Kalrax attackers and the Children's Ark. The cruisers had minimal power, just enough for basic maneuvering, but they formed a living shield around the vessel carrying their species' future. "They're sacrificing themselves," Lee whispered, watching as the Kalrak ships redirected their fire to the intervening cruisers. The selfless act created the opening Clark needed. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Get us behind the lead Kalrak's vessel." The Horizon shot forward, executing a dangerous maneuver through the debris field to emerge directly behind Thraxis's flagship. "Activate disruptor arrays 2 and 3 simultaneously," Clark commanded. "Target their engine section." 2 more hybrid disruptors activated, their combined energy fields creating a cascading disruption that completely collapsed the flagship's aft shields. The Horizon fired everything it had at the exposed engines, scoring critical hits that left the massive warship drifting. "Direct hit," Rahman reported. "Their main propulsion is offline." For a moment, the Kalrak's attack faltered as their command ship lost power. Clark seized the opportunity. "Open a channel to Warlord Thraxis." When the Kalrak's leader's face appeared on screen, his reptilian features were contorted with rage. "This changes nothing, human. You have merely delayed the inevitable. Look around you, Warlord." Clark responded calmly. "Your flagship is crippled. 2 more of your vessels have taken significant damage from our hybrid disruptors, and you've just witnessed Varelli civilians willingly sacrifice themselves to protect their children." He leaned forward. "Is exterminating refugees really worth the cost you're paying?" Before Thraxis could respond, the tactical display lit up with new alerts. "Captain!" Lee called out. "Multiple new contacts dropping out of FTL at the system edge." Clark felt a surge of hope. "Identification?" "Earth signatures. Captain, it's the relief fleet. They're 3 days early." On the view screen, Thraxis's expression shifted from rage to calculation as he too received reports of the new arrivals. Clark pressed his advantage. "Those are human warships, Warlord. The cruisers, Defiant and Resolute, along with their support vessels. This is no longer a one-sided battle." For several tense moments, Thraxis remained silent, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. "A temporary cessation of hostilities may be prudent. We will withdraw to the system edge to reassess." "And the Varelli?" Clark pressed. Thraxis's eyes narrowed. "The Kalrak's empire does not recognize them as non-combatants, but we will allow time for diplomatic considerations." After the transmission ended, cheers erupted across the Horizon's bridge. But Clark remained cautious. "This isn't over," he warned his officers. "Thraxis is just buying time to repair his flagship and evaluate our reinforcements. But we've bought the Varelli breathing room, literally and figuratively." As the Kalrak's fleet withdrew to a safe distance, the human relief ships approached. Clark opened a channel to the lead vessel, the massive humanitarian ship, Mercy. "Horizon, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UHS Mercy," came the response. "Looks like we arrived just in time." Clark smiled wearily. "Your timing was impeccable, Captain Chen. But I'm curious. How did you reach us 3 days ahead of schedule?" "Admiral Zhang pulled out all the stops. Captain, every available ship was redirected to form this relief mission. The Galactic Relief Directive has been implemented at the highest level. We've brought medical supplies, food synthesizers, engineering teams, everything the Varelli need." For the first time since the battle began, Clark allowed himself to feel genuine hope. "Then, let's get to work. We have 1.5 million refugees who need our help, and a potentially hostile force watching our every move." The next 48 hours saw a flurry of activity as human relief personnel integrated with the Varelli fleet. The Mercy, a massive vessel designed specifically for humanitarian crises, docked with the Children's Ark, while engineering ships attached to failing Varelli cruisers to stabilize their life support systems. In a secure conference room aboard the Mercy, Captain Clark, Commander Vesh, and Captain Chen met to discuss their precarious situation. "The Kalraks haven't withdrawn from the system," Clark explained, gesturing to the tactical display where 20 warships remained in formation at the system's edge. "They're watching us, waiting for an opportunity." "Can we evacuate the Varelli to human space?" Captain Chen asked. Commander Vesh shook her head. "My people number 1.5 million. Even with your impressive fleet, a full evacuation would take weeks, time the Kalrax won't give us. And our largest vessels cannot be abandoned. They contain our cultural archives, our biological repositories, everything that remains of our civilization." "Then we need a more permanent solution," Clark said. "And we need to address the Kalrax situation directly." As if summoned by his words, a communication officer entered the room. "Captain Chen, we're receiving a transmission from the Kalrax flagship. They're requesting to send a representative to discuss terms." The three leaders exchanged surprised glances. "Accept the request," Chen decided, "but implement full security protocols." An hour later, they gathered in the Mercy's diplomatic chamber as a Kalrax shuttle docked with the ship. To everyone's shock, the representative who entered was not Warlord Thraxus, but a younger Kalrax officer. "I am Admiral Talo." He introduced himself with formal rigidity. "I speak on behalf of Warlord Thraxus and the Kalrax Empire." Commander Vesh tensed visibly at his presence, but maintained her composure. "What terms does Thraxus offer?" she asked directly. Admiral Talo's reptilian features remained impassive. "The Warlord proposes a cessation of hostilities under specific conditions. The Varelli must acknowledge their status as subjects of the Kalrax Empire and surrender all military technology." "The Varelli are refugees, not combatants," Clark interjected. "And they possess no military technology. Their vessels are civilian." "The hybrid disruptors you deployed suggest otherwise," Talo countered. "Those were improvised from communication arrays," Captain Chen explained. "Not weapon systems." The negotiation continued in circles until an unexpected interruption occurred. Alarms blared throughout the medical section of the Mercy. "What's happening?" Clark demanded over his communicator. "Medical emergency in Bay 4, came the response. "Multiple casualties from an explosion aboard one of the Varelli vessels." Dr. Morales' voice cut in. "Captain, we need assistance immediately. We have wounded from both species, including Admiral Talo's security detail." Clark looked at the Kalrax admiral, whose stoic expression had finally cracked into one of concern. "Your people are among the injured," Clark told him. "Come with us. See how we treat all wounded, regardless of species." In Medical Bay 4, chaos reigned as human medical personnel rushed to treat both Varelli and Kalrax wounded. A joint engineering team had been working on a power coupling when it overloaded, causing an explosion that injured personnel from all three species. Admiral Talo watched in silence as Dr. Morales personally treated a severely wounded Kalrax officer, working with the same dedication she showed to human and Varelli patients. "His internal bleeding is severe," she explained as she worked, not looking up from her patient. "Kalrax physiology is resilient, but he needs specialized care." "You know our biology?" Talo asked, surprise evident in his voice. "We've been studying it since we arrived in this system," Morales replied matter-of-factly. "Standard protocol. Understand all species involved in a humanitarian crisis. Your officer will survive, Admiral, but he'll need time to recover." Hours later, when the crisis had passed and all wounded were stabilized, Admiral Talo requested a private meeting with the three leaders. His demeanor had subtly changed. "I will speak plainly," he began. "What I witnessed today conflicts with what we have been told about other species, particularly the Varelli." "And what have you been told?" Commander Vesh asked quietly. "That you are cowards who fled rather than accept your place in the natural order. That humans are primitive newcomers, meddling in affairs beyond their understanding." He paused. "Yet, I saw Varelli engineers risk their lives to save Kalrax officers after the explosion. I saw human doctors treat my people with the same care as their own." "Because that's what civilized species do," Clark said simply. We help each other, regardless of differences. Talo was silent for a long moment. I will return to Warlord Thraxus with a modified proposal. I cannot promise he will accept it, but I will try. After the Admiral departed, Commander Vesh turned to Clark. Do you trust him? Not entirely, Clark admitted. But something changed in him today. Sometimes witnessing compassion firsthand can shift perspectives in ways arguments never could. Captain Chen nodded in agreement. In the meantime, we continue preparations as planned. If diplomacy fails, we need to be ready to protect the Varelli fleet. 2 days later, as engineering teams completed the stabilization of critical Varelli life support systems, a communication came from the Kalrax flagship. Warlord Thraxus himself requested a direct meeting, not on the Mercy, but on a neutral location, an automated trading outpost at the system's edge. It's obviously a risk, Clark told the assembled human and Varelli leadership. But it's also our best chance at a diplomatic solution. I don't trust Thraxus, Commander Vesh stated flatly. He orchestrated the genocide of my people. Which is precisely why you should attend this meeting, Clark countered. The Varelli deserve representation in any negotiation that determines their fate. After much debate, a delegation was formed. Captain Clark, Commander Vesh, Captain Chen, and Chief Engineer Petrov would represent the human Varelli coalition. They would travel to the trading outpost aboard a small, lightly armed shuttle, vulnerable enough to appear non-threatening, but equipped with emergency FTL capabilities if escape became necessary. The outpost was a remnant of some long-vanished trading species, a cylindrical structure rotating slowly in the void, its systems automated and neutral. As the human shuttle docked, sensors confirmed that the Kalrax delegation had already arrived. In the outpost's central chamber, Warlord Thraxus waited with Admiral Talo and 2 armed guards. The warlord's imposing presence dominated the room, his scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lighting. Captain Clark, he acknowledged with a slight incline of his head. Commander Vesh, his tone noticeably cooled when addressing the Varelli leader. Warlord Thraxus, Clark replied formally. We appreciate your willingness to discuss a peaceful resolution. Thraxus gestured to a circular table. Let us speak plainly. The situation has evolved since our initial encounter. As they seated themselves, the warlord continued. The Kalrax Empire has invested significant resources in pursuing the Varelli. We cannot simply abandon this campaign without concessions. The Varelli are not yours to pursue, Commander Vesh responded firmly. We left Kalrax space. We seek only to exist in peace. Yet you fled with technology and resources that rightfully belong to the Empire, Thraxus countered. Our ships? Our cultural archives? The knowledge our people developed over millennia? Vesh's luminescent eyes flashed with rare anger. Those never belonged to the Kalrax. Before tensions could escalate further, Captain Chen intervened. Perhaps we should focus on the present situation rather than past grievances. The reality is that the Varelli fleet is now under human protection through the Galactic Relief Directive. Additionally, more human vessels are en route to this sector. This news clearly surprised Thraxus. More ships? Earth takes humanitarian crises seriously, Clark confirmed. The initial relief fleet was just the first wave. A diplomatic envoy is already underway, along with additional support vessels. Admiral Talo leaned forward. Warlord, I believe we should consider the proposal I discussed with you. Thraxus's eyes narrowed, but he nodded reluctantly. Very well. The Kalrax Empire is prepared to offer terms. The Varelli may retain their civilian vessels and population under certain conditions. He outlined a series of demands. Limited movement rights for the Varelli fleet, regular inspections by Kalrax authorities, and trade concessions. Commander Vesh listened in stony silence before responding. These terms amount to continued subjugation, not peace. They are more generous than annihilation, Thraxus replied coldly. Clark raised a hand. If I may suggest an alternative approach, Earth is prepared to offer the Varelli settlement rights on 2 terraformable moons in a neutral system. We would establish a protected zone where the Varelli could rebuild under joint human Kalrax oversight. And why would the Kalrax agree to this? Thraxus demanded. Because in return, Clark continued, Earth would establish formal diplomatic and trade relations with the Kalrax Empire, including exchange of certain technologies. This caught the warlord's attention. What technologies? Captain Chen elaborated. Our medical advances, for one. You've seen what our doctors can do for Kalrax physiology. Additionally, we'd be willing to discuss limited cooperation on propulsion research. And weapons, Thraxus pressed. Defensive systems only, Clark clarified firmly. And contingent upon a formal non-aggression treaty between all 3 species. For nearly 6 hours, the negotiation continued, with proposals and counterproposals flowing back and forth across the table. Eventually, a framework began to emerge. Not a perfect solution for any party, but a compromise all could potentially accept. As the meeting concluded, Thraxus addressed Commander Vesh directly for the first time without hostility. Your people fought well, in their way, not with weapons, but with persistence. Perhaps there is something to be learned from the Varelli after all. Vesh's expression remained guarded, but she nodded in acknowledgement. And perhaps there is a path forward that doesn't require either of our species to destroy the other. As they prepared to depart, Admiral Talo approached Dr. Morales, who had joined them toward the end of the negotiations to discuss medical cooperation. The officer you saved, he said quietly. He was my brother. The Kalrax do not easily forget such debts. Morales smiled gently. It wasn't a debt, Admiral. It was simply the right thing to do. Nevertheless, Talo replied, it changed something, perhaps in all of us. 6 months later, Captain Aidan Clark stood on the observation deck of Aegis Station, a newly constructed orbital facility orbiting one of the terraformed moons where the Varelli had begun to settle. The station served as a diplomatic hub where representatives from Earth, the Varelli refugees, and the Kalrax Empire could meet on neutral ground. Beside him, Commander Rilara Vesh gazed down at the moon's surface, where the first Varelli cities were taking shape alongside vast agricultural zones developed using combined human Varelli biotechnology. When we fled our homeworld, she said softly, I never imagined we would find a new beginning like this. It's only the start, Clark replied. The terraforming is proceeding ahead of schedule. Within a year, both moons should be fully habitable for your people. Rilara turned to him, her luminescent eyes reflecting the starlight. And the Kalrax? Do you trust them to honor the Aegis Accord? Clark considered the question carefully. Trust takes time, but Admiral Talo has proven to be a man of his word. The non-aggression treaties are holding, and the technology exchanges have begun. He smiled slightly. It turns out the Kalrax are particularly interested in our medical sciences. Because they saw humanity save lives rather than take them, Rilara observed. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon is compassion. Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Mara Lee, who approached with a data tablet. Captain, the Horizon is ready for departure. All systems checked and crew aboard. Clark nodded. Thank you, XO, and the new personnel. The Varelli scouts and Kalrax emissaries have been assigned quarters as requested. Although I'm still not entirely comfortable having Kalrax officers aboard. They're there as observers, not commanders, Clark reminded her. And having representatives from all 3 species will help solidify our alliance. As they walked toward the docking bay where the Horizon waited, newly refitted and upgraded with technology from all 3 species, Clark reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. What had begun as a desperate rescue mission had evolved into something far more significant, the foundation of a new interstellar coalition. Our mission to the uncharted regions leaves in an hour, he told Rilara. Sure you won't join us? She shook her head. My place is here with my people. We have much rebuilding to do. She placed a slender hand on his arm. But I have something for you before you depart. From within her flowing robes, she produced a small, crystalline device. This contains our star charts and cultural databases, everything we know about the sectors beyond Kalrak space. There are other species out there. Captain Clark, some friends, some foes, all part of a galaxy far more complex than any of us realized. Clark accepted the device with appropriate reverence. We'll use this knowledge wisely, Commander, and we'll return with new discoveries of our own. At the airlock leading to the horizon, they were joined by Admiral Talo, now the official Kalrak's emissary to the Tri-Faction Pact. Captain Clark, he greeted formally. The Kalrak's observers are prepared for departure. Excellent, Admiral. I look forward to showing you how humans explore. As final preparations were made, Clark found himself standing between representatives of two species that, only months ago, had been locked in a genocidal conflict. Now they were cautious allies, united by a shared experience that had demonstrated the power of cooperation over confrontation. Aboard the bridge of the horizon, Clark took his command chair and surveyed his crew, human officers alongside Varelli scouts and Kalrak's observers. Different in appearance, biology, and culture, yet working together toward a common purpose. Helm, prepare for departure, he ordered. Set course for the Omega Sector. As the horizon detached from Aegis Station and accelerated toward the stars, Clark thought about the 1.5 million Varelli refugees who now had a future because of a chance encounter in deep space. One small ship had made a difference, not through superior firepower or technology, but through the simple choice to help those in need. Captain, Lieutenant Lee reported from her station. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual quantum signatures in the target sector, possible evidence of artificial structures. Clark nodded, feeling the familiar thrill of discovery. Then let's go see what's out there, XO, together. The horizon surged forward, carrying representatives of three species who had learned that even in the cold vastness of space, compassion could bridge the void between worlds. Behind them, Aegis Station continued its silent orbit around the new Varelli homeworld, a symbol of what could be accomplished when civilization chose to overcome its divisions and embrace the better angels of its nature. It was just the beginning.